Hello, and thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day to listen. I'm Marnie Farnes, the Relationships and Strategy Manager with Columbia River Economic Development Council. This is the first of 4 podcasts where we feature business startup stories and also give some practical advice to entrepreneurs as we lead up to Global Entrepreneur Week, November 16th through the 22nd. Also, on November 19th, be sure and join us as we host each of our podcast guests from this podcast series on a live Zoom WebEx. You won't want to miss out. This will be an excellent opportunity to ask questions and learn from those who have either experienced starting a business or who have studied it. Either way, there will definitely be something for you. Now today, I'm very excited to introduce to you Ben Warnick, Assistant Professor of Entrepreneurship and Strategic Management at Washington State University's Carson College of Business. Ben has done extensive research in the area of entrepreneurship and has some useful ideas to share based on his research and findings. Ben will touch on finding and maintaining your passion, what to do with failure, and the importance of holding on to your vision and your voice when starting a business. But before we jump into today's episode, I want to be sure and say thank you to IQ Credit Union for generously sponsoring this podcast series.
Hey, business owners, thank you so much for logging in and clicking in today. We're super excited that you're joining us. My name is Julie Ahrens, also known as IQ Julie, and I'm blessed to work for IQ Credit Union, your local nonprofit, non-bank financial institution in town. We've been around since 1940, helping business owners make their business dreams come true. So whether you're a startup business and you have this dream and you're not ready to take it to the next step, or maybe you've done this for a really long time and you're ready to get out of business, so maybe you need help with succession planning or retirement planning. Whatever stage you're at in your business dream and in your business journey, IQ Credit Union is ready to help you. We've got a large team of business loan officers, business bankers, business account specialists, and we would love to partner with you. So thank you so much for joining us. We're super proud to sponsor the CREDC live podcast series. And whether you're clicking in for the first podcast or maybe you're clicking in just for the live panel event at the end, whatever it is, we're excited you joined us. The Credit Union is super excited to be part of this important series, helping business owners' dreams come true. So next time you need a business loan, some other business service, we hope you'll consider IQ Credit Union. You'll be glad you did. Enjoy.
Hey, Ben. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, glad to be here.
So, Ben, I've already shared a little bit with listeners about you, but would you introduce yourself and tell listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do? Sure.
So, Ben Warnick, I'm an assistant professor of entrepreneurship at Washington State University, Vancouver. So I teach and I do research. My research is mostly around entrepreneurs themselves. So getting into their head, their passions, their motivations, and I've looked at that in a variety of contexts. So with family business succession and motivation of the successor, in social entrepreneurship, and the core of my research is really people using entrepreneurship as a vehicle to pursue their passions. So for example, people taking a hobby or something that they love and are passionate about and finding a way to make a living doing that by becoming entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So today I'd like us to talk a little bit about finding and keeping momentum when you're an entrepreneur. And as you mentioned, you focus on this topic in your teaching and in your research. And you also mentioned how a lot of entrepreneurial ventures start as hobbies and interests. And of course, they morph into businesses. So it's interesting because it's one thing to do something because you enjoy it. And it's another thing entirely when you take your idea and you put it out to the community and beyond. So what have you observed that often holds entrepreneurs back in that context?
Right. So a variety of things. So like you said, I mean, this is common. It's about 1 in 4 people start from a hobby, but I mean, even people who don't start as hobbies, a lot of things hold them back things related to fear. So there's a lot of vulnerability that comes with being an entrepreneur, putting yourself out there, seeing your business as a reflection of yourself, and the feedback that you get about the business can be tough to take, and there can be some insecurities associated with that, both externally and the internal critic, the kind of the anticipation of how things could go well or poorly, and uncertainty associated with that. People comparing themselves with others and feeling like they're not good enough, fear of judgment, rejection, time constraints and fears associated with that, pressures associated with making money, and ironically, some fear of growth, that some entrepreneurs actually fear things growing too quickly and what that means for their life, and things kind of spiraling out of control to where they're not in the driver's seat anymore, per se.
Yeah. And I'm sure it feels safer when things are maybe smaller and a little more in just maybe more protected. So can definitely see how that might be, a real fear for some. And I can see how starting and growing and maintaining a business would feel intimidating and overwhelming. What are some steps entrepreneurs can take to face their fears and push beyond that?
So starting small first. So really facing those fears, it really takes building up some confidence first. So in my research with a lot of hobbyists, even people around Clark County area and beyond, found that it really helps to start small, to gain experience and confidence, to really focus on those small wins and to expand out to where you develop that confidence and those skills to be able to push forward. So it doesn't have to be an all at once kind of thing, but that forward momentum, even just taking very small steps and interacting with people who are like-minded and who can provide encouragement for you can be really instrumental in keeping that momentum moving forward instead of stagnating or stopping altogether.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's true in life, but especially for those who are kind of putting themselves out there and feeling vulnerable. It's those small steps that can be the biggest wins and matter the most. Yeah,
in research, we talk about what's called a growth orientation, which I think has gained some popular attention as well. This idea that we can that we're not fixed, that our abilities are not necessarily innate, that we can grow and learn through experience. And the more that people adopt this kind of growth mindset, the better equipped they are to realize that I may not be great at something now, but I can be great if I put in the effort.
Yeah, thank goodness for that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. If we're all comparing ourselves to the most successful entrepreneurs in the world, right. That's a pretty high bar of comparison. That's right. That doesn't happen in a day, to say the least.
Yeah. So speaking about failing, gosh, I know if I had one thing I could do better in my own life, it'd be to embrace failure and mistakes. And I almost hate to use the word failure, but for the sake of today's conversation, I will, because sure. I know a lot of people, hold the belief that failure isn't even a thing; it's all opportunity. So, but I want to talk a little bit about that because it is part of life and it's an important one. But in terms of what entrepreneurs face, how might they view failure or rejection? And when is something considered failing? And when is it just an opportunity? Not just, but an opportunity.
Right. Well, I mean, I would hold the view that failure is always an opportunity because failure always provides information that you can learn from. So that's not to say that failure isn't incredibly difficult. So when your business fails. So that can involve a lot of grief and a really tough, it can take a very tough emotional toll. So ignoring that wouldn't be wise, that emotional aspect. And what research shows about moving forward from failure is that it's important to take that time to kind of process and to feel it, but all to move from taking time away and moving forward, and also making sense of the failure. So we use the term kind of failing forward in research and in entrepreneurship, that if you fail, use it to move forward. Don't let it push you back. So in some of my research about failure, even with entrepreneurs whose business has failed, so with some colleagues at Washington State University, we studied entrepreneurs who wrote postmortems about their failed businesses. And ironically, a lot of them, even who took the time to write about it, are very defensive, and they don't take it as an opportunity to learn. They more just take it as time to vent. So even small failures, big failures can all serve as an opportunity to learn, to grow, to be better, and to move forward. And that's the approach that I encourage my students and entrepreneurs to take, is to fail forward. You're gaining this experience through failure. Wear it as a badge of honor, not something to be ashamed of.
Right. And, I can see where, so there's like a business failing entirely. But then there's also the things that happen while you're in business, maybe certain attempts or certain things that you try that either fail or don't seem to work. And I can see how it would be important to learn from those things as well. And it's kind of like what you were talking about with the steps, the little steps. And, if a little step ends up not producing what you had hoped it would, but learning from it and letting it guide you.
Yeah, they can really compound. If you adopt that mindset of a growth orientation and failing forward, then the small mistakes you can pivot and you can correct and move forward. Where if you ignore them, they just compound, and things can really get worse to a point where it's much more difficult to pivot and to get back on track.
So, okay, so we've chatted a little bit about failure and mistakes, and I kind of link rejection into that group.
Sure.
But what about generating and maintaining motivation and well-being when you're in business, and maybe avoiding burnout? What about that part of being an entrepreneur?
So I think this is something that all entrepreneurs struggle with, and people broadly, with a lot of stress in life and in work, and just burning out, and we set a pretty high bar for ourselves, and being passionate and always being at that 100%, and just so excited about what we're doing, which there are ups and downs in anyone's life. So my research, what I've found with hobby-based entrepreneurs, are kind of the extreme of trying to do something that they love, but that all entrepreneurs face, I believe, is the importance of passion, progress, and having a purpose. So I can talk about each of those individually, if that'd be helpful.
Sure.
Okay. So in terms of passion, so what I found is that it's incredibly important to have your voice cut through what you're doing, to feel like what you're doing is authentic. So, but the caveat to that is that there are certain pragmatic aspects of running a business that you need to be flexible in what you're passionate about and where you go, because you're not just creating value for yourself. You have to connect that with what the market wants, with what customers are going to pay for. So it's important to think about that, to connect back to who is that sense of self, who am I, and connecting what you're doing to who you are. Second, with progress, so these 3 Ps, passion, progress, and purpose. The second being progress, getting experience, putting in effort, feeling that you're growing. And this can, the obvious negative side to this is when someone feels like they're not progressing, that can really hurt your motivation. But on the other side as well, if you're not being challenged enough, that can really stagnate motivation as well. And then finally, this sense of purpose and relatedness with other people, connecting what you're doing with its impact on other people, and a sense of community, that other people are supporting you and you're supporting them. You matter to other people through what you're doing, and connecting that to what you're doing can really help boost your motivation and your well-being.
Yeah, that's good information. Appreciate that. And so some listeners are in the place of where they're just thinking of starting a business. Others have started and are questioning, did I do the right thing? Obviously with COVID, there's been some big setbacks for many businesses.
Right.
So that's understandable. What are some points that you want entrepreneurs to know just in general?
So first of all, with my research on passion, I think it's interesting that the Latin root of passion, so passio, actually means sacrifice. So we often think of passion as the positive angle, but we don't think about what we might have to give up.
Right.
And so I like to think of, to encourage people as they're pursuing their passions and thinking about these kinds of things, to consider, what are you willing to give up for this? What are you willing to sacrifice? Whether it's time in other aspects of your life, whether it's financial trade-offs you might make, and going through the ups and downs of running a business. For people who haven't started yet, or who are really searching for that passion, I always discourage people from treating this as a mental exercise purely. That passion isn't found by sitting around and thinking too much. Passion, what the research shows, is that passion is built through effort, and putting in effort with something that could be important to you. So even just that hope of, I could be interested in this, I could be passionate about this, is where you should start, and then go out and start taking steps forward to develop it, rather than just thinking that your passion is going to flash like a bolt of inspiration.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
Right. Yeah. So it's effort, and wow, I like the passio connection, and the meaning actually means sacrifice. Good information. And not surprising, because, there's definitely a sacrifice that you hear from all entrepreneurs that they've made. So,
right.
Sure. Yep.
And some people, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say that, so with that sacrifice, as I was talking about earlier, it's important to keep your own voice. So if you sacrifice too much, or if you even sacrifice your own voice, to try and cater to what the market wants, that can really lead to obsessiveness. So in a lot of my research and in these interviews, I've found that people who make too many trade-offs, just chasing that dollar, they take on too many demands, and they lose their sense of their why, of what they're doing. And if you do that, if you're chasing every customer, if you're taking on too many demands, then there's this research about harmonious versus obsessive passions. And passions become obsessive when the demands outpace the resources that you have to meet the demands. So you're taking on too much, that leads to burnout, and it creates this vicious cycle where, because you're burned out, the demands pile up even more, you feel even more overwhelmed, and you just can't turn it off. You're no longer in control of your passion is controlling you. So we often talk about entrepreneurs that you should like eat, breathe, sleep, bleed your passion. But there can be a real downside to that of not finding the work-life balance and taking care of yourself, that if you sacrifice yourself for your business, you can really burn out and stifle the long-term potential for your success with that business.
I can see that. That's just how life is. You know what I mean? Like with everything that you hear that all the time about first, you know, caring for yourself. You've got to do that first before you can adequately care for anyone or anything else. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Like
but
one person that I interviewed in starting up this line of juices and smoothies that she was making, she loved it. She was getting so into it, but she realized that she was just burning out, which is normal, right? And when you sense that looming, she said, well, I need to go take a vacation. So she went and traveled and went to the beach, and she just couldn't even turn it off. She found she wasn't even enjoying her vacation because she had taken on too much. She had become a little too obsessive about it. So it's important to make sure that you don't take on too much, that you keep that in check and keep your voice. Otherwise that passion starts controlling you, and you can't check out, you can't recharge, which is so crucial.
For sure. So like that point kind of leads me to the next one, which is our closing topic.
Sure.
So, yeah. So if you leave one thing with entrepreneurs to think about or to do today, what would it be?
So there are a lot of things you could do, but I think we all have a lot that we're doing right now. So I want to make sure that I give one that isn't adding to the pile, but can actually help focus it. So what I would recommend is starting a progress journal or a passion journal, where you just write down, even today, some progress, something that you did today that helped move you forward in some way. Remembering, as we talked before, that it even could be a failure and something that you learned from that. So it could be something that you did, some connection that you had with the customer, or some positive interaction you had with someone else. And if you can tie these kinds of things to your passion, to the bigger picture of where you're headed, these can serve as really great checkpoints to keep fueling your passion. Every point of progress or purpose that you can note helps fuel your passion and energizes you to be able to keep moving forward. So tying those small wins into the bigger picture is so crucial, and can really help you appreciate what you've done, appreciate what you're doing, instead of waiting for some just big milestones.
Right. It's the little things. It's always found in the little things. Yeah. The little things matter the most. Yeah.
They do.
Well, that's good advice. I'm actually going to do that myself.
Yeah.
You know, you just get so caught up in your work and what you're doing and your passion, and it's all fun and exciting, but it is important to take a minute and reflect on your day or your week, and kind of either mentally make a note. I think it's good to write it down, because then you can see like the accumulation of all the things that mattered, you know, from day to day. So
and that can be very motivating. And even research with what people would think of as menial jobs, that who could ever be passionate about it, like janitorial work. There have been studies with janitors who connect to what they're doing and to why they're doing it. And when they do that, they feel a lot more satisfaction and well-being and purpose and passion in their work.
Right. There's a bigger purpose behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you, Ben, so much for joining me and sharing all of your information and knowledge. Really appreciate it. I feel really lucky and fortunate to have you in the community, but also just sharing what you know with listeners. I think it's going to be quite helpful.
Thanks for having me. Thrilled to be here. Thrilled and looking forward to meet everyone in the area and kind of plug in more to the entrepreneurial community here. So thank you, Marnie.
Thanks again for joining us today. I really enjoyed Ben's encouragement to entrepreneurs to remember to keep your vision and hold on to your voice. Also, to take care of yourself as you pursue your passion and learn to see mistakes and failures as opportunities. Next week, Mei Wu, co-founder and VP of Corporate Development with Speak Technologies, will be my guest. Not only will she talk about her latest venture, which is super exciting and you're definitely going to want to hear about it, but she'll also share about fundraising, which is, of course, a topic that is very important to pretty much all new businesses. So until then, on behalf of the entire CREDC team, have a great week, and thanks so much for listening.